Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my Week 6 waiver wire targets for the 2020 fantasy football season. On today's episode, of course, we're going to be talking about my waiver wire targets at the running back, wide receiver, tight end, and quarterback positions. I'll give you guys my thought process as to which one of these breakout players that had incredible Week 5 performances are going to not only play as depth on your team and potentially be used because of the injuries upcoming, the games being canceled, and the bye weeks that are about to happen. Again, 4 teams going to be on bye in Week 6. And then going forward, the bye-apocalypses are going to continue to pile up and hurt many of our rosters. But these guys can not only just be depth, but be potential starters for your team going forward and help you get to the fantasy football playoffs and win a 2020 fantasy football championship. That's the plan for today's video. If you want, timestamps are down below. Outside of that, I want to thank you guys for the incredible support. We're almost at 30,000 subscribers. If you have not yet already, click that subscribe button, join the community. We're going to be creating fantasy football content here on the daily for the entirety of the 2020 fantasy football season. So please do me the favor. Let's get to that 30K subscriber mark. Be absolutely incredible. Last night, my Lakers won their 17th championship. We talked about it on Sunday morning. Kickoff with Kickoff for those of you who are interested. It's 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time every Sunday morning. I talked about them. I wanted them to win in convincing fashion. They went ahead and they definitely did that, so I'm proud of my Lakers. Hopefully today, Chargers end up going to rep it out and at least keep the game close. I know the Saints, they got a talented group there, so hopefully Herbert just plays consistently. That's all I'm asking for. Outside of that, we should be good to go. Thank you guys again for taking time out of your day to watch my videos. I really do appreciate it. I'm hoping you guys enjoyed today's video. Outside of that, we should be good to go. Again, make sure you leave a like down below, comment. I read all the comments down below. I don't have time to answer them all, but I definitely do read through them. Appreciate it, guys, and let's get into it, shall we? So, starting off with our number 1 running back waiver wire target for Week 6 of the 2020 fantasy football season, we have ourselves Alexander Mattison, and due to the injury to Dalvin Cook did sustain a groin injury going into the second half, and Alexander Mattison had to step in and play because, again, a groin injury for a running back is pretty devastating, to be honest. So as of right now, I don't really have any information as to where exactly the timeline sits on Dalvin Cook after the MRI is kind of taking place and information has been divulged by the organization. We'll have a better idea of as to when maybe potentially Dalvin Cook will be returning. As a Dalvin Cook owner, and I know many of you are, I've already handcuffed Alexander Mattison accordingly. But here's the deal. If in fact you are not a Dalvin Cook owner and you can go definitely pick up Alexander Mattison. He's only owned in 40% of Yahoo fantasy leagues. So that means that 60% of your leagues are potentially up for grabs. You can go grab the starting running back of the Minnesota Vikings. But I don't think he's going to be the starter for very long. Again, this upcoming week, they take on the Atlanta Falcons. I love the matchup. Alexander Mattison can very easily be a 20-point running back this week. Fill into your flex and give your team another boost to potentially win this week. So you're basically paying for a potential 20-point player just for 1 week. Because in Week 7, the Minnesota Vikings will have a bye week. In Week 8, which typically these kind of groin injuries will take 2 weeks to kind of heal up and get ready to go, Dalvin Cook could return. Now, of course, if in fact information is divulged that he'll be out for longer, then we can go ahead and adjust accordingly. But again, Alexander Mattison against Atlanta this upcoming week, a beautiful sight to see. Just last night against the Seattle Seahawks, 20 rushing attempts for 112 yards, 3 targets, 3 catches for 24 receiving yards. Again, he is just as good as Dalvin Cook because this offense is built to run the ball, and he's a great running back. So again, my number 1 running back option on the week. My number 2 option is Myles Gaskin. We've been talking about him for months. But the thing is about Myles Gaskin, he's still only owned in 77% of leagues. And because there weren't too many running backs that I wanted to go ahead and plant the flag on and say pick him up this week, I just wanted to go ahead and once again remind everybody that if he's available in your league, he must be picked up. He had a total of 21 touches this past week. That's a couple weeks in a row now that he's getting a lot of touches in this backfield. Finally got the goal line work. He's gotten over the edge or over the hump and scored 17.6 fantasy points, 16 carries for 57 yards and a touchdown, 5 targets, 5 receptions for 34 yards. This past week, had a pretty good game against the San Francisco defense, which should have been tough for him. But this upcoming week, with the schedule shift, the Miami Dolphins will be taking on the New York Jets. And it should be a pretty good matchup for Myles Gaskin. Absolutely should be a pickup as the starting running back of the Miami Dolphins as that offense is humming with Fitzmagic, of course. Moving on to Chase Edmonds. We talked about him last week. You should have picked him up. And again, he had himself a fantastic performance. 17.7 fantasy points against the Jets. Of course, Kenyon Drake was still relevant. Had himself 13 carries. Kenyon Drake scored a touchdown. But so did Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds on 3 carries, 36 rushing yards, had a rushing touchdown on 6 targets, had 5 receptions for 56 receiving yards. On this upcoming week, takes on the Dallas defense. Regardless of whether or not Kenyon Drake is getting touches, I think Chase Edmonds has got himself guaranteed value as a flex going forward. Only owned in 64% of fantasy leagues. I think Chase Edmonds is a guy that you should definitely be picking up, whether he's a handcuff or potential flex option going forward in a PPR format. We have Devonta Freeman as my number 4. Devonta Freeman owned in 74% of leagues. Shouldn't be surprised. He is a starting running back in the National Football League. We must have picked him up weeks ago when we talked about Saquon Barkley going down. And after Devonta Freeman was officially signed, a lot of you did pick him up. Last week, against the Dallas Cowboys, had 17 carries for 60 yards and a touchdown, 2 receptions on 3 targets, 27 receiving yards, a 15.7 fantasy point game. That is a great game for Devonta Freeman. And going forward, this upcoming week takes on the Washington football team. It may not be the easiest schedule going forward for this team, but I think, of course, they're going to continue to lean on Devonta Freeman as their RB1 because, again, Daniel Jones has been struggling. As long as they can get some sort of ground game working, which I think they can definitely do against Washington this upcoming week, Devonta Freeman, he's got himself some inherent value that I definitely want to be tapping into. We move on to number 5. We have Damien Harris. Now, Damien Harris did not get to play this past week because the game between the New England Patriots and Denver Broncos, which was supposed to take place tonight, has been postponed to next Sunday. Now, he takes on the Denver Broncos in week 6. The last time we saw Damien Harris was against the Kansas City Chiefs, in which he had 17 carries for over 100 yards. Now, one of his carries went for 41 yards, but again, he was still a pretty effective running back. And with Sony Michel on the IR, it seems that Damien Harris has taken the starting spot of this New England Patriots backfield. Of course, we're going to still see rotations from Rex Burkhead and James White accordingly, but Damien Harris seems to be the guy on the ground and potentially on the goal line going forward. Only owned in 54% of leagues, I think Damien Harris is a guy that you could potentially take a shot on. If, in fact, you are going to be dealing with a lot of bye weeks this upcoming week, Damien Harris is a guy you can keep your eye on, potentially pick up. The last running back I wanted to talk about today, Cam Akers. Again, here's the thing about Cam Akers. As of right now, Darrell Henderson seems to be the starting running back. I mean, sometimes Darrell Henderson doesn't look like the starting running back. Then Sean McVay goes back to him. Either way, I think Malcolm Brown right now is 100% droppable. And Cam Akers is probably the handcuff in that backfield. He had 9 carries for 61 yards on Sunday. And though it was a decent performance from him, of course, I mean, that's more than decent. Averaging 6 yards per carry plus is a great game. But the whole thing is, can he, in fact, end up getting some work on the goal line, being relevant? Can there be 2 starting running backs in this backfield in which we can, support and kind of be happy with in fantasy? There's a possibility, and I think there's definitely a chance that Cam Akers can at least get himself more work going forward. Now he's back from injury, dealing with that rib injury. But again, these are my top 6 running back waiver wire targets. We can go ahead and move on and talk about some wide receivers that had some exciting weeks in week 6. Now, again, Chase Claypool is our number 1, and it shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, this rookie Notre Dame wide receiver, 4 total touchdowns on Sunday. Now, a lot of the receivers that I'm going to talk about in the next coming minutes benefited from injuries happening to their teammates. Now, of course, we don't want to see injuries. I mean, there were plenty of injuries this past week. I mean, when Dak went down, I was yelling at my TV because it's unfortunate to see. It really is sad for players to go out like that. And you hate to see it. So again, unfortunately for the situation in Pittsburgh, Deontay Johnson once again got injured. And this is a reoccurring thing. Deontay Johnson cannot stay healthy as of thus far this season. That's really unfortunate. But Chase Claypool, he stepped up. This is a 6'4", 230-pound wide receiver. He is a big guy, and he's getting down the field, and he's making plays for this team. Not only did he have a rushing touchdown early in this game, but he had 11 targets for 7 receptions, 110 receiving yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns, 39.1 fantasy points. Now, when we talked on Sunday and I told everybody, hey, Deontay Johnson should be a great play, that's why he should have been a great play. Because those statistics that I just read could have easily gone in the direction of a Deontay Johnson. The number 2 cornerback, Avonte Maddox for Philadelphia, was out. And boy, did Chase Claypool take advantage of it when his opportunity was knocking. He had a great game. And going forward, if in fact Deontay Johnson is going to miss time, Chase Claypool seems like he's the go-to for a Ben Roethlisberger in this offense. Had himself an incredible game in that target count. That's a juicy one. So we go to move on to our next wide receiver. It is Brandin Cooks. Now, in comparison to Chase Claypool, who's only owned in 16% of leagues right now in Yahoo, Brandin Cooks is at a 43%. Now, Brandin Cooks has not shown up thus far this season. Had one decent game but even then has been injured for a majority of the first half of the season, the first month of the season. Now, this past weekend against the Jacksonville Jaguars, 12 targets, 8 receptions, 161 receiving yards and a touchdown, 26.1 fantasy points in a half PPR scoring format. That I did not expect. Because again, we knew Brandin Cooks is a great wide receiver, but in this offense, he was a ghost. He literally was invisible to Deshaun Watson, but finally they found a connection. I was talking about it this past week. Hopefully Deshaun Watson finds his number 2 receiving option because they need one. And hopefully this is it. Going forward, Will Fuller, Brandin Cooks, the 1-2 combo that we expected in the preseason to finally at least kind of find its stride is in a full effect. Hopefully this upcoming week against Tennessee should be a good matchup for them. And I think Brandin Cooks going forward could have some value. We have ourselves Laviska Shenault as number 3. Shenault, here's the thing. Again, with the injuries that have taken place, DJ Chark left the game late yesterday against the Houston Texans. But again, DJ Chark, if in fact he's going to miss time, Laviska Shenault seems like he's going to be the guy that is gaining a lot of the receptions and targets going forward. If in fact DJ Chark is out, we've seen it from this offense at Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew becomes a check down Andy where he is only looking at one receiver. He's not open, he's checking the ball down. He has no reads, no progressions, and that's unfortunate. But Laviska Shenault being that Swiss Army knife for this offense, a little bit of that, he's pretty much their slot receiver at this point. 8 targets, 7 receptions, 79 yards this past week. A pretty good game, and going forward should be pretty decent against Detroit this upcoming weekend. We have ourselves T. Higgins at number 4. Another injury to the wide receiver core of Cincinnati. A.J. Green goes down with a hamstring injury. A.J. Green's season was not looking great, and it's beginning to really start going downhill, unfortunately. But T. Higgins, over the last couple of weeks, has been consistent, has gotten targets. 8 targets, 4 receptions for 62 yards. Obviously, they got shut out, and they did not do anything. Joe Burrow was horrible. I think he scored 4 fantasy points this past weekend. So, again, that has been rough. This upcoming week, they take on Indianapolis, another tough defense, but I expect it to be a lot easier than what exactly they faced against Baltimore this past weekend. Pretty rough, but T. Higgins has a lot of value, again, as the number 2 wide receiver or the number 1 outside wide receiver of this Bengals offense. Moving on to our next wide receiver, we have ourselves Preston Williams at number 5. Now, here's the thing about Preston Williams. He was given a fantastic opportunity on Sunday against the defense that was hurting badly. The San Francisco 49ers defense, and to be honest, their offense was struggling heavily against Miami, even at home. The thing was, again, majority of the secondary members of that San Francisco 49ers defense are struggling with injuries. Emmanuel Mosley once again missed another week, and multiple corners and safeties have been missing games just this past weekend as well against Miami. That has definitely made them struggle, and their rotation doesn't look as clean as it has in the past. They had to bring up a practice squad player to play the number 2 corner spot for them this past Sunday. And of course, Ryan Fitzpatrick, with the experience he has, is going to take advantage of it, and that's exactly what they did. Preston Williams, 5 targets, 4 receptions for 106 receiving yards and a touchdown. This upcoming week with the schedule change, plays against the New York Jets. Should be a pretty easy matchup. And if in fact he's going to continue to see these kind of targets, could have some value going forward. We have ourselves Christian Kirk, plays against Dallas this upcoming Sunday. Dallas is one of the easiest matchups at the wide receiver position, even though Darius Slayton had a touchdown called back. I guarantee you there were multiple opportunities for that Giants offense to win that game, especially in the passing game. Fortunately, they weren't able to do it, but Christian Kirk has kind of gotten himself a little bit more usage over the last couple of weeks. Obviously dealt with injuries earlier this year. 34% owned in fantasy right now. Had 7 targets, 5 receptions for 78 yards. And if in fact Kyler Murray can find him, if Kyler Murray is going to be throwing the ball for 300 plus yards a game, Christian Kirk is eventually going to be able to benefit from that and sits there at number 6 accordingly because of it. We move on to our next wide receiver. We have ourselves Travis Fulgham. Now here's the thing. He is wearing a little bit of a Detroit Lions practice shirt, but here's the thing. He does play for the Philadelphia Eagles. And as of right now, he seems to be their number 1 wide receiver. In the coming weeks, they do play against this upcoming week, the Baltimore Ravens. And it is going to be a tough matchup. But the way that he was absolutely just given so many targets, 13 targets, 10 receptions for 152 yards, and a touchdown against Pittsburgh. Now, I know Pittsburgh's secondary, that is their weakest spot in comparison to the run-stop pass rush defense that they have up front. But my goodness, I cannot ignore the fact that this guy had 26.2 fantasy points. Regardless of the upcoming matchup, I don't know who's going to be healthy in this offense. And that brings up our next option. I mean, I might as well talk about him right now. Alshon Jeffery, another one of these Philadelphia Eagles. Alshon Jeffery has not played this season and has been on the PUP/IR list for the last couple of weeks. if in fact he makes a return this upcoming week, these two guys could be of value going forward. Greg Ward, this Philadelphia Eagles offense needs receivers because they don't have Zach Ertz. They aren't able to get Miles Sanders the ball in the passing game. Greg Ward was able to at least find some value this past week, but again, they are in desperate need of receivers. This division, the NFC East, is wide open now with Dak going down, unfortunately, but it's open for them. So if in fact these two guys can step up going forward, could be valuable fantasy options. The last option I wanted to mention is Henry Ruggs III. Henry Ruggs dealing with injuries, didn't have too much exposure, didn't have too many opportunities, but with the opportunities that he was given, 3 targets, 2 catches for 118 receiving yards and a touchdown. My goodness, that was a huge surprise to see the Las Vegas Raiders end up beating the Kansas City Chiefs, who did not look good offensively. I mean, Patrick Mahomes was getting pressured, and that's how you beat Patrick Mahomes. You put pressure on him. You force him to make 15-step drops, and you really send it on him. But either way, Henry Ruggs is the last receiving option as of right now. Not because he's owned in 44% of leagues, because I think he can be picked up around majority of leagues, but because they have a bye week this upcoming week. So again, you could wait on him or potentially just grab him now and figure it out going forward. The next group of players I want to talk about is our Week 6 tight end targets. Starting off with, of course, number 1, a player that last Thursday night had himself a pretty good game, and this is beginning to be a force of habit for Jimmy Graham. He is going to be the red zone target for this offense. If in fact they're not able to effectively run the ball with David Montgomery, they're going to continue to have to pass the ball to either Allen Robinson or Jimmy Graham. This past week, Jimmy Graham, 5 targets, 3 receptions for 33 yards and a touchdown, had a one-handed snag when he was being draped by a defender for a touchdown. Again, the usage there is going to be a key thing for Nick Foles in this offense. As long as you get down to the red zone, you're going to need to find an option. Seems to be like Jimmy Graham's that option. Playing against Carolina this week, I'm pretty confident with the schedule and the potential of him. Moving on to our number 2, Austin Hooper. We've talked about Austin Hooper in the past, but with David Njoku coming back this last week, I thought, okay, maybe we could see a little bit of regression from Austin Hooper and his opportunities, but in fact, we saw the opposite. They used Austin Hooper like they actually know how to use him. They are finally giving him more and more opportunities. He had 10 targets this past week. I mean, one of his targets and receptions came from an Odell Beckham pass. But either way, 10 targets, 5 receptions, 57 yards, 8.2 fantasy points. Plays against Pittsburgh this upcoming week. And though that's a tougher matchup, I still think Austin Hooper going forward could be of value if, in fact, they're going to give him targets and he's going to play such a big part in that play-action scheme. Moving on to Eric Ebron. Again, Eric Ebron did unfortunately fumble the ball this past Sunday. But outside of that fumble, still got some pretty good utilization. He wasn't able to get that touchdown that I was hoping the upside was there for. 6 targets, 5 receptions, 43 receiving yards. Again, if in fact he doesn't fumble, we get ourselves a little bit more opportunity here and there. This upcoming week plays against Cleveland, another advantageous matchup for him. But again, Chase Claypool stealing all the touchdowns. So of course, Eric Ebron and even Juju Smith-Schuster and James Conner played second fiddle to that. Moving on, Irv Smith Jr., senior. Here's the thing about Irv Smith. The fact that he got 5 targets, 4 receptions for 64 yards is exciting. Not only that, they play against Atlanta. Atlanta is not great against opposing tight ends. They are not at all. And I know Carolina was not able to take advantage of that, but I'm telling you, with this defense, their safeties, their receivers being banged up, there could be a potential that Irv Smith, that's only owned in 6% of leagues, could be a tight end that could have a breakout game in these coming weeks and potentially be an option going forward. Kyle Rudolph not really doing much in this offense and isn't really expected to do much, as he's mainly just a blocking option or a 6th offensive lineman. Cameron Brate's my number 5 option here. I thought Gronk could end up doing something. Gronk was pretty much, he looked slow. He looked like he just wasn't in it. And Cameron Brate was able to pull a lot of targets and get a lot of snaps respectively. 44 receiving yards on 5 receptions, 6 total targets. This upcoming week plays against Green Bay. Should be a back and forth shootout, and hopefully Cameron Brate gets himself a little bit more involved. The last tight end option I wanted to mention, another guy that's only owned in about 1% of leagues, similar to Cameron Brate. We have ourselves Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett, again, is beginning to make Tyler Higbee disappear. Tyler Higbee is getting to that point where I'm ready to drop him. So again, Gerald Everett, who last year was according to PFF, one of the top 10 rated tight ends in terms of performance in the passing game. 4 targets, 4 receptions, 90 receiving yards. Playing against San Francisco, we just saw what Mike Gesicki did against that defense. I'm sure Sean McVay is already scheming up for that. Should be a pretty good game there for him. we move on to the quarterback position, where we talk about my number one quarterback on the week, Matthew Stafford. Just coming off of a bye week, Matthew Stafford could easily be available in your league. If he is available, you want to pick him up, because the last time we saw him perform, though he was a little bit shaky against New Orleans, still had himself 3 passing touchdowns and 200 passing yards. The upcoming schedule for the Detroit Lions: they play against the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Atlanta Falcons in the next 2 weeks. Those are advantageous matchups, to say the very least. And with Kenny Golladay back, that offense humming, they should be in line for some great performances from Matthew Stafford. Moving on to our next option, of course, it's Ryan Fitzmagic, the beard himself. I mean, what a day. 350 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Got himself some work on the ground like he always does. This upcoming week, plays against the New York Jets. Should be an easy game for them. After this New York Jets contest, they will have a bye week in week 7 with the schedule shifted. But either way, he's only owned in 20% of leagues. I've been talking about Ryan Fitzpatrick for the last 2 weeks. He is a top 16 quarterback, even better, to be honest. The performances he's put off, I mean, he's definitely going to be a top 12 guy this upcoming week, without a doubt in my mind. So again, a guy that you should be picking up if in fact you need a streaming quarterback this week. Moving on to our number 3, we have ourselves Jared Goff. Again, I'm glad that Jared Goff actually stepped up to the task at hand. Playing against Washington wasn't easy, but again, when they were given so many opportunities with the injury of Kyle Allen and then Alex Smith coming back, a great story to see Alex Smith back, but he didn't look great. He was a check down Andy. And here's the thing: Jared Goff right now owned in 77% of leagues, even more than Matthew Stafford right now. That's why I'm confident you could probably grab Stafford potentially off the waivers. But Goff, over 300 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, had a rushing touchdown, plays against San Francisco. If San Francisco's secondary is going to be struggling as much as they are, and they really can't stop the run, because again, what Myles Gaskin was doing, I know it was against a defeated defense and they weren't in the game, but my goodness, there could be a very good chance that Jared Goff could lead this Rams, offense right through San Francisco. Moving on, Andy Dalton. I'm not even joking. I think Andy Dalton's not a bad option. Yesterday, he was 9 of 11 passing for 111 111 passing yards. Made some clutch passes on the sideline. That second catch from Michael Gallup on that game-winning drive. I mean, that ball was on the spot. Andy Dalton is probably going to be surrounded with the most talent he's ever been surrounded with in Dallas going forward. And with their upcoming schedule, I'm pretty excited about them playing against Arizona on Monday night. They have a long time to be able to study, get some chemistry with Andy Dalton and his receivers. Of course, we don't know who's going to be the leading wide receiver. Sure, he was getting the ball in the direction of Michael Gallup, but that doesn't mean that Amari Cooper or CeeDee Lamb are going to be disappearing or Dalton Schultz are going to be disappearing in this offense. I think though Andy Dalton is definitely a downgrade from Dak Prescott, I think he's still going to be at least giving this offense a sense of life. If you play in a 2 QB league, of course, you're automatically picking up Andy Dalton, but I think going forward, even in a 1 quarterback league, I don't mind him. I don't mind him at all, especially in that offense. Moving on, we have Justin Herbert. Plays tonight against the New Orleans Saints. But I think he has a bye week due to the schedule change that is coming forward because of all the teams that are being shifted around and canceled games. That being said, once he comes back from bye week in week 7, he has a 4-game slate that is to die for in terms of fantasy production potentially. They play against the New York Jets, the Miami Dolphins, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Las Vegas Raiders. Those are 4 games I want Justin Herbert for, so therefore I am potentially trading for him or potentially going out and picking him up. Trading for him in a 2 QB league, of course, not in a 1 quarterback league. You don't need to trade for Justin Herbert, but as of right now, not a bad option. The last option I wanted to mention, though, is Kirk Cousins. And though he didn't look great this past Sunday Night Football game, they play against the Atlanta Falcons. And you don't have to, be the greatest quarterback. You just got to be decent. Last night, he had 249 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, fumbled once, turned over the ball once through the air. That one-handed pick by KJ Wright was incredible. Just snagged it right out of the air. It looked like a Madden play. But regardless, I think Kirk Cousins could be a value going into this game against Atlanta. Again, one of these juicier matchups going into the week. That's basically it. We went over it. We've gone over my running back, wide receiver, tight end, and quarterback waiver wire targets. Of course, this last week, the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers both had bye weeks. If, in fact, Robert Tonyan somehow, some way is available in your league, he should have already been picked up. Hopefully, you've already gone ahead and done that. He's already owned 70-some-odd% of leagues, so I thought, let's not mention him because, again, he was number 1 waiver wire pickup last week after that Monday night game against Atlanta. So hopefully, he's already been addressed and picked up. If, in fact, you need a tight end going forward against Tampa Bay, should be a pretty good game for him. That pretty much covers everything. I want to thank you guys for stopping by, watching my channel once again. I mean, you could be doing anything else, but you spend your time here today. with Andrew, so I do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Make sure if you have not yet already, click that like button if you like today's video. Click the subscribe button, join the community. If you want more content regarding everything I do in the fantasy football community, you can go to patreon.com/AndrewKirchhoff. The link is down in the description for those of you who are interested. Thank you again, and until tomorrow, running back video, running back rankings on Tuesday. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.